Hey folks, today I wanted to answer a question that a friend of mine had about basic programs and machine language programs, but more specifically, just a phenomenon he was seeing that some of you might be familiar with already. If, for example, we happen to load something off the disk like this, just speed up the load, and then we list it, and we just see all this garbled stuff in the listing. He was asking like what's going on there. So yeah, I prepared some slides to hopefully walk through what's going on there. So just kick them off. So yeah, first example I thought of was deciphering the bytes of a basic program. That might help. And on the Mega 65, there's different points in memory where the programs start depending on which machine you're on. So for the Mega 65, it's at this location 2001 hex, or that in decimal. On C64, it's at 801 hex, or that in decimal. So maybe just to kick things off, let's just type a simple basic program that's going to cycle the background color. I think I'll do this in the Mega 65. I mean, both systems have a lot in common in relation to this sort of thing, so it shouldn't really matter. So if I was to type that out, actually I'll also prepare a disk. I think I had in my downloads folder, did I have a disk ready? Downloads. Yeah, I made a test disk here. I'll just drop that in, mount it. Okay, that's mounted. It's just an empty disk. It's just something to save to later. So 10 for k equals 0 to 255. 20 poke 53281. This is the background color, and I just want to change that in a loop. And then 30 next k, 40, go to 10. We can give this a try and see it cycling the background color wildly. All right, so that's that. That's all there. Where do we go from here? Oh yeah, we can enter the monitor program, so I can do that easily. I just type monitor, and here we are. So what's our plan next? Take a look at the bytes that were placed in memory with M2001, which is for me the Mega 65. If you to do this example on the C64, you'd see something similar at this address 801. And so if I do M2001, I'll see a bunch of bytes in here and lots of zeros afterwards. So I think I've singled out the bytes of interest down below. Starting from 2001, it shows 16 bytes, and then 2011, 16 more bytes, 2021, 16 more bytes. Yeah, each row is 16 bytes worth of information. And but let's see how these bytes compare to the program we have on the right here. So we've got this first line here, the 10 for k equals 0 to 255, and that's equating to this first set of bytes I'm highlighted here. And let's look at the first 2 bytes mentioned here, and I'm saying that these first 2 bytes are the pointer to the next basic line. So these are the bytes for this basic line, but there's like a linked list pointing at what's the next line. So this address here, 2013, is the address of where this next line starts. So this is byte 2011, 2012, 2013. So this 2013 is pointing over here. So those two is going to point to this next line, 20 poke 53281, the background color, comma k, and those are the bytes that express that 20 poke 53281, comma k, which we'll decipher later. And this is like a linkage that's making this line will point to the next line, and then this follows suit. Then we've got these first 2 bytes of this line will point to the next line. So this is 2022. We see here this is byte 2021, so 2022 is over here. So that refers to this next line, 30 next k, which equates to these bytes over here. And again, these 2 bytes at the front, oh sorry, that's the linking over here. These next 2 bytes to 2002A, and I guess you can just assume that's over here next. I mean, we could count it 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 20A. Yeah, and so what have we got here? Yeah, so these bytes further on is the line 40, go to 10. So we've got these bytes over here, and so that's pointing to this line 40 information here. And the first 2 bytes here will point to the end of program, these 2 bytes here. So basically this is normally where it's expecting 2 bytes to the next basic line, but if it sees 0, 0 here, that means like a sort of null terminator. That's like the end of the program, this listing. So yeah, what have I said here? Next 2 bytes are the line. Oh, okay. We've explored the first 2 bytes of each line. They're like a pointer to the next line. We've seen that. Beyond that, now let's look at the first 2 bytes we see after that pointer to bytes, and that's restoring the line number. Next 2 bytes are the line number. So this line number is 10, and so this 000A is an expression of in hexadecimal, the number 10. If you're not familiar with hexadecimal, you should just open up calculator and type in the letter A here, and you'll see in decimal it's the number 10. Maybe if I also ought to explain this, the format they've got these numbers might be a little confusing for the uninitiated. It's called least, what do they call again? Least significant byte or something like that. Little endian, that's what they called it. When like 8-bit computers were expressing larger numbers, there were 2 types of CPUs out there that would prefer to call them little endian or big endian. So if they wanted to express a big number like hex 2013, on the little endian CPUs, they would put the least significant byte first, 13, followed by 20. But on big endian CPUs, they'll put the most significant byte first, and the least significant byte after that. So for Commodore machines with the 6502 processor, yeah, we're of this little endian variety. So that's why when you see these 2 byte hex values, you'll see the how do you say it? The low byte first, the high byte after. So yeah, that's hopefully an explanation of that. So yeah, this 0A equates to line 10. That's how that's recorded in the bytes there. If we look at the next line here, that's line 20. We see that's hex 14. And again, if you put 14 in your calculator under hex, you see that's decimal 20. So going back here, you see the next line is 30, which equates to the second set of bytes here. And that's the hex value 1E. And again, we see it in decimal, that's 30. And then line 40 is the next 2 bytes in the line here, and we see that's 28 hex. So 28 hex is decimal 40. So yeah, that's it, what the next 2 bytes along in a line are. And then after that, we've got the contents of the line. So that consists of usually things like basic token values. So for example, there we've got this the 4 in the 4K equals 0 to 255. So this 81 hex value is equivalent to that 4. So when the basic ROM is sort of inspecting this line as it interprets what these are as it runs, when it sees 81, it says, I know that this is a 4 token. I know I need to jump to my routine to handle 4 routines. So yeah, that's what the tokens are used for. Just as in the second line, we see there's a poke command here. If we look on the second line, we can say, okay, 97 probably stands for poke. So when the basic ROM sees a 97, it says, I need to go to my poke routine and look for a number next and a value to poke into that number. And there's another one on line 30, the next command, and you can see that on line 30 here, the third group. That's the hex 82 is equating to next. And go to on the line 40, you can see on the 4th chunk of bytes that this byte here is 89, and that's how the basic ROM knows that 89, you want to go to, let me check my go to routine and check for what parameters you've got there and make it happen. And the other thing we see on a line are these sort of pesky encoded characters, where let's say for example a space bar character is the hex value 20, so we see 4 space K over here. So when we look at the hex on this side, we see that space is represented by the hex 20. What else is there? Oh, yeah. Also, with these sort of hex dumps, these binary dumps we get from the monitor, so we see these 16 bytes per line, And beside that, we see like a sort of pesky representation to the right of it of those 16 characters. So that's just a convenience. Not all hex numbers will equate to a pesky character. When that's the case, you'll see these dots. But when it is the case, they will show up as pesky characters here. And that might be a convenient way to sort of spot where are the pesky elements within a byte sort of array. So here we get 20 is showing up in that ASCII or pesky representation here. So if we keep going along line 10, K in pesky is the hex 4B. So we've got the K here, and over here after the space, the 20 hex, we get the 4B. That's our K. And we can keep going along like this, and there's another space here. Oh yeah, and we saw the K represented over here as well. And there's another space after the K. We see that's also showing up here as well. But we can skip spaces for now. Let's go to the next thing here, this what's called the equals. So the equals is another token that the basic ROM will look out for. So I'm putting that in purple. And from here I'll skip the spaces because we know 20 is a space. That'll be a space. So the next thing of interest is this 0. That's 30 hex in pesky. And things from 0 to 9 are that 30 to 39 range in hex for us. So this 0 we can see over here. That's the pesky representation of the 0. And beyond that, oh yeah, we see that on the pesky representation here as well. And then there's the 2. So we see that's another token that BASIC will look for. That equates to 2. And then there's the number 255. There's also a space here that's 20. But you see 32 is the 2, 35 is the 5, and 35 is another 5. So that's 255 in pesky. Okay. Oh, yeah, we also see that in this pesky representation on the right as well. So after that, after a line is complete, we have this kind of null terminator character at the end. The basic ROM decodes these tokens and executes minimal routines. Oh, yeah, okay, you kind of get the gist of that. So null terminator here, null terminator there for that line, null terminator there for that line, null terminator there for that line. Okay, so yeah, that's deciphering that line. I mean, if you're keen on deciphering the other lines of this program, you're welcome to, but I think that's sufficient. Yeah. So how basic programs are saved loaded? So we can simply save this by typing save basic example, comma 8. Maybe we can give that a try. I'll exit the monitor, save basic example, comma 8. Don't really need the comma 8 on the Mega 65, but anyway, let's do it anyway. So yeah, that'll save a prog file, PRG. They got this sort of suffix over here, PRG file to the disk. And what we're not seeing though is that the first 2 bytes of a file are going to be the memory address that the file will be loaded into later on. Maybe to try and catch that, what we can do, yeah, I think no, let's focus on this. We've saved this to that test disk, and if I open that test disk in this DirMaster tool, there's a Windows tool, we see it's got the basic example now. And maybe if I could view the file, I don't know, if I view it in hex, I feel like it'll still hide that detail from us. Yeah, I think it'll still hide it in hex because it'll interpret those first 2 bytes and put them here. So maybe let's not do that. Let's export the file as a PRG file. Basic example PRG. I'll put this somewhere, I don't know, in the downloads folder, basic example. All right, it's saved as a PRG there. So if I go to my downloads, do I have my downloads here? And I'll just open a command line here. And if I'll just borrow Sequin's hex dumper. And what was it called again? Basic example, PRG. If I take a look at, it doesn't have less. Anyway, it's a small program, shouldn't matter. Okay, so if I look at the bytes that this PRG file consists of, we'll see the first 2 bytes are 2000, well, in little endian form, yeah, 2001. But after that point, we have the bytes that the basic program consists of. So maybe we can confirm that. by looking back at what we had on the last slide. Maybe that's where the shot. Oops, that's not the place. I'll go back. So what did we have here? And I'll compare it with what's in that command line, if I can find it. Where was it? Is it this thing? Yeah, okay, here we go. Let's compare these two. So if we compare these two, we see that the PRG file has added these first 2 bytes, 2001, which is, have I mentioned it here? Yeah, on the Mega 65, the basic program start address is 2001. So when we save a file, it's saving that location where it should belong, in addition to the bytes of the program. So you see, after this point, we've got 13, which was the start byte of the, the pointer stuff, and then the line number stuff. All that goes on from there: 13, 20, 0A, 00, 81, and so on. Everything else matches up. But the only difference between what's in memory and what's on the file is, yeah, those first 2 bytes, which are the address where when we type load, it's going to look at those first 2 bytes and say, oh, I need to load it into this location. That's the idea behind that. So yeah, we saw how the program was saved, and we've had a look inside that PRG file. The first 2 bytes will be the memory address that the file will be loaded into later on when we load it. So after this, it'll save all the bytes that describe that basic program. We saw that. So yeah, all of that, the only difference is it's got that 2001 at the front, little endian form 0120. So now there's this, when we load, back in the C64 days, we could do, basic example, (8) or (1). So there's a little subtlety in that (1). So if the optional (1) at the end is used, that's like a flag, and it will load the program at the memory address specified in the first 2 bytes. So that means this is like forcing whatever those first 2 bytes were, in our case 2001, yeah, we're definitely forcing this program to be loaded there. But what if you, so yeah, for basic program, we saved it from basic, so that location is always that for the C64 or that for Mega 65. But yeah, if we don't use the (1), then the basic loader is going to ignore those first 2 bytes. So you specified something else here, maybe a different address like C000. So then BASIC is going to just say, I don't care where you want this program loaded, I'm going to force it to where the start of BASIC is. So for C64 programs, it's going to force potentially your assembly program to go to the start of BASIC here, or your Mega 65 assembly program, and it will force it to BASIC's location there, which may not be what you want. So let's compare that to, let's say, another example now, like an assembly program example. So let's make a similar assembly language program via the monitor again. So just simply consisting of this. So yeah, we'll jump back to Zemu. Can I find it? Yep. So now if I were to type this in the monitor, so I'll go to monitor, I'll type assemble C000, increment D021, which is the same as 53281 in decimal, and then jump back to C000. So basically, see, I'm just continuously incrementing the color of the background again and again, just looping over and over. I just press enter or return again to leave the assemble mode, and X. Oh, actually, no, I won't exit yet because we. Oh yeah, I will. Let's run the program. Okay, X. Maybe for this I'll use Go64 mode because it'll be that address is easier to execute from there. So I put it at C000, which is in decimal 49152. So if I was to assist 49152, yeah, we get all this fancy background color changing. So I'll just break out from there. I can jump back to the Mega 65 side with that syscall. So again, let's jump back to the monitor and take a look at the bytes that were dropped in that C00 location of this short assembly program. Yeah, and we see there's not much there, just a few bytes and then lots of zeros afterwards. I've pasted that here too. And yeah, we'll take a similar look of the lines of this assembly program and how they've been sort of, how do you say, formed the sort of bytes that they have. So this first line that's been put at the address C000 is an increment of D021. So that consists of the first 3 bytes here. You'll also see every time you're in the assembler and you assemble a line, it puts the same 3 bytes next to what you've typed. So that's a handy reference too. And then the next line, this jump to C000, is these next 3 bytes over here for C0, C0, and you see those next to it here as well for C00, C0. And what we're seeing is, for one thing, opcodes. Let's say this increment, this INC, and that has a bit like as a basic token, you had a certain hexadecimal number that equated to that basic token. For assembly, you're seeing sort of opcodes that are sort of hard-coded to certain hexadecimal values. So let's say this EE is the increment opcode. The jump, the JMP, is this 4C opcode. And after those opcodes, we're seeing some sort of parameter that the opcode needs. So did I highlight these? Maybe I didn't. But anyway, I guess we can kind of see, maybe I forgot to put a highlight on D021. We can see this has been changed to little endian form 21D0, and they're the next 2 bytes along, and C000 was the parameter to the jump. And you can see that's been converted to little endian form 00C0. And oh yeah, it looks like I have done highlights. So yeah, we see yeah, they're connected there, and that one's connected there. Okay. So now how assembly and machine language programs are saved and loaded. Let's take a look at that. So inside the monitor, we can save this short little program like so. Annoying headset dropped out again. So we'll go back to the monitor and do so. To save ML example, oops, I can't spell, (8), and starting address and ending address, which is I think one after the last byte that was there. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Okay, that's saved. All right. So that's going to save the PRG file to the disk again. And maybe we should take a look at that one too. So back in dir master, I don't know what to call it, directory master, dir the ML example. Again, I can't use the hex output of this because it's going to view file as hex. It'll show it from the C. Yeah, it'll interpret the first 2 bytes. And but if we were to export it out as a PRG file, that's going to make it a bit more obvious again. And if I was to jump into the hex dump of it, the ML example. Okay, and we see the first 2 bytes are the address that the program wants to be loaded at, C000. Okay, so just as before when we saved from BASIC, the BASIC save routine specified we want our program to be loaded back at BASIC start for Mega 652001. But for the monitor, when it's saved out, it knows that you wanted to stay from the starting address of C000. So it says when this loads back, it'll load from that address too. So, okay, we got that far. We're up to the slide. So again, we saw the first 2 bytes of the file will be the memory address the file will be loaded into. So when we want to load this back into memory, we want it to load back into this address C000. And after this, it'll save all the bytes describing the machine language program, which I guess we can confirm that too. Where did we have the... so here we had C000, but beyond this we have EE21D0, EE21D0, and after that 4C00C0. So yeah, beyond the first 2 bytes, it's exactly the same as what we've put into memory. Yeah. Okay. So we could use the monitor command to load that program again. Maybe I'll just restart ZMU, so I'll just close it down. And let's open Mega 65 again, just so we got fresh memory in that location and it's all reset to zeros. Like if I go into monitor now and I sort of look at the memory at C0, we see it's all zeros again. So we could reload it via the monitor too, via this L command, but let's not do that. But instead, let's exit to BASIC and load it from there. So ideally, we should load it with comma 8, comma 1. Because remember, this comma 1 is the flag that's going to say, please pay attention to those first bytes, first 2 bytes of the program that specify what address to load to. Okay, let's try that now. Load ml example comma 8 comma 1. So let's jump into the monitor and let's see what's at C00 now. Yeah, we've got our program back there, EE21D0, or we could disassemble from C00. Oh, that went by too fast. Maybe I'll just change to smaller. Okay, monitor, disassemble C00. Okay, there, increment, yeah, it's all there in the correct position in memory. Okay, so yeah, as we loaded from BASIC, it read those first 2 bytes in the file, in the PRG file. So that's how it knew to load the rest of the contents into this C000 location. But what happens when you load a machine language program as if it were BASIC? Yeah, this is the gotcha cause that, let's say my friend was experienced. What if you were to omit that comma 1 flag? So instead of typing comma 8, comma 1, you just typed comma 8. So if that's the case, the BASIC's load routine is going to ignore those first 2 bytes. So actually, let's try that. I'll exit CMU again. Let's start it up again. All right. So this time, I haven't mounted. Am I? Oh, I've still got that there. All right. Oh, I don't know. I must have had it on a default disk as well. Okay. So load ml example comma 8. So now if I jump into the monitor and look at the memory here, it's still at 000. It hasn't gone to where I wanted it to go because yeah, that comma 8 without the 1 meant it's ignored the first 2 bytes. And so it's going to load where I wanted that machine language code at the basic code memory start instead. So for the C64, it would have loaded it here, and for the Mega65, it would have loaded it here. Well, maybe I can take a look at that too. If I look at the memory at 2001, well, I see something a little bit different, but I do see some bytes still in the right place. Not sure what happened. Oh, maybe the load routine sort of does a little bit of extra work there. Okay, well, something happened. But yes, if we were to type list now, after doing that, load ml example, comma 8, yeah, list now shows all this garbage stuff instead. So what's going on there? It's that now whenever you type list, BASIC looks at the start of BASIC memory and it assumes there's a BASIC program there. So instead, we've put our assembly program there. So BASIC sees the bytes that would have been at C00 at this BASIC start and starts interpreting it like it was BASIC code. So you call the first 2 bytes here were meant to be a pointer to the next line, which for our example is probably just full of zeros. So the first line number would be the next 2 bytes. So you see the first line number is 4CD0, which is this funky number you have here that we're seeing. So you can confirm that in your calculator if you like. Go to hex 4CD0. Yeah, so all that sort of weirdness you're seeing is because of what's it's interpreting machine language as basic code. And after that you see the 00 for the end of line termination for that line. So then my friend also had that hopefully answers my friend's first question on why sometimes you load some assembly program and list it and you see all the garbled stuff. So that was his first question. But the next question is why is it that some machine language programs load fine in BASIC and they have a syscall in them when you type list? They just show like a 10 sys to some location. And so such machine language programs have what's called a short BASIC stub. So I got the Seawolf paddle game as an example here. So where I've loaded Seawolf 4 paddle with just a comma 8, I didn't need a comma 1. And when I list it, it's got like a 10 sys some address. So that's called a basic stub, and the goal of the basic stub is to just provide a short basic program, and that will run the assembly program that just lives right beside the basic program, right after the basic program in memory. And that's what the syscall is doing. The syscall is just a very minimal basic program. So this is now jump to the assembly program straight after me. So yeah, so and that's why, let's say, this will work, is because when folks write these basic stubs, their intention is to write them so that they live at the start of basic memory. So their first 2 bytes will usually be, 0801 for the C64 or 2001 for the Mega 65. So if you were to use .8, .1, that's fine. They'll load in the right location. Or if you were to ignore the .1 and just leave the .8, they'll still load in the right location. Either way is fine. So then I guess just as a background, how would you go about writing a basic stub? And because I'd done it recently for the first time, we could take a look at the Seawolf stub example I had for the 4-player Seawolf. And this is written in Acme assembler. And yeah, this is what's responsible, at least the start of it is what's responsible for providing the 10 sys2061. And so we can break it down into its parts. For this is a C64 program, so I'm starting the program at this memory location, 0801. If you recall, that's the start of basic memory for the C64. So this word basic end, so I've said that this is a pointer to the next basic line. So right now we're on basic line 10, but we want to know what the line next, and that's been put down here as basic end later on. So that's the terminator of the whole basic, how you say, the whole basic program. Next up is this word 0A, and you recall 0A was the line 10 number. So that's the represent. When it says word here, that's the compiler's way of saying write down the number 0A in 2 bytes. So for us it would be little endian. So in byte form this would actually be writing 0A00. And just as this word basic end would be writing whatever address this ends up to be in little endian form in 2 bytes as well. So next up is the byte 9E, this one. This is the token for the sys command. Sorry, the basic sys token. And then after this token, there's these 4 bytes that represent in PEXSCII 2061. And yeah, that's the address of the machine language routine that is coming after the end of basic. That's that initialize routine, which will eventually point to there. After this, we have a byte of 0, which is the null terminator for the end of the first basic line. Yeah. And then after this, we have the terminator, if you like, of the entire basic program. Yeah. And then, so when you type run here, that syscall is going to start this syscall over here, or where is it over here somewhere? That's over here. But yeah, this once it executes this line, it's going to jump execution to this initialize label over here, what comes immediately after basic, and it'll start executing, all the assembly machine language sort of steps beyond. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had. So hopefully it explains those first 2 questions, why we see garbage sometimes when we load a machine language program and it lists it in basic, and also why sometimes we load a machine language program and it looks very elegant with this sort of one-liner syscall. So that's just the basic stub and the assembly routine called immediately after it. Okay, I'll leave it at that. That's all I wanted to share. Okay, thank you.